Good morning. I guess that's part of videoing with a cat around. Anyhow, welcome to Books at the Bottom of the Stairs. My name's Lorene and this is Cleo Bell. We just moved a small couch into my studio, and I think there probably is a fair amount of dog smell on it that she's noticing. I'm not. So she's just a little restless. Normally she's asleep at this time of year. So this is going to be a quick reading wrap up for the last couple of weeks. Some of the books I've had that I'm going to show you have been around since the beginning of COVID, and I have finally managed to get through that. I have one more book that I picked up during that before we got into lockdown to read, but I'm saving that one for the cottage. So the first one today is Tana French's The Witch Elm. Now, Tana French has always, or the ones that I have read, have had some pretty fascinating characters. This main character is kind of a, let me see, his name is Toby. He's considered to be a happy-go-lucky, kind of carefree guy where nothing ever seems to stick, or none of the mud seems to stick. The good stuff seems to stick. He ends up having a particularly bad head injury, and at first it's concussion based, and as time goes by they realize that there's actually some brain damage in there. So we get to know Toby a little bit before his injury and a lot afterwards, and we end up encountering his family. He's got two cousins that are sort of his ages, as if they had been siblings, and they had spent all their childhood together when they weren't in school. And Toby and his younger boy cousin had been in the same boys' school, and the other boy was definitely bullied and I probably assaulted, and we get one or two pictures of that child's background, so he did not have it easy, and Toby just, was pretty okay with that. His other cousin, let me just think now, what was her name? Anyway, she was more resourceful, but she was a bit more of an observer and knew what was going on with their cousin, but also had her own troubles as teenage years erupted. So Toby and his brain injury has gone to stay with his uncle, and the uncle has a brain cancer. So the two of them are navigating their way through the issues of brain damage in some fashion, and along the way a body is found in the hollow of a tree on their property, and an investigation ensues, and we find the main character and his two cousins trying to speculate on what's taken place. The family gets into it as well, but not as deeply, and we follow the three cousins and the uncle through the journey of the investigation. There is an ending that I thought, I kind of predicted about halfway through one thing about Toby and one thing about the uncle, and while I was slightly right, there was a twist that took place towards the ending that made it well, what did I say? Yeah, it wasn't predictable. The ending wasn't where I thought we were going to go. So that's nice. This is somewhat of an unreliable narrator, and somewhat because he's got memory issues and people are manipulating him, memory, reality. There has a lot to do with that. There has a lot to do with how you cope with a family situation where other people are being abused, whether you're an enabler or a protector. And so it's definitely a good read. I had read 50 pages at the beginning of the pandemic and thought, I don't want to deal with someone with brain injury at the moment, and then picked it up. Took me a little bit to reread those 50 some odd pages, and then I was into it. I think I even stayed up one night until about 2 in the morning to finish it. So things that are good about this book and things were not good about this book, and I think the not good part mostly had to do with the narrator, his brain injury, and the fact that I've had a concussion and my mom's currently going through brain damage as a result of a stroke. So some of the things were just a little uncomfortable with respect to that. So the second book that I have recently read is Jacqueline Woodson's Red at the Bone. And this was one that I love Jacqueline Woodson. So this is a just released this year. I think it was in February. And I picked it up and sort of tucked it in the back of the COVID pile because I didn't want it to get ahead of the others. This is a story about two different families. Melody is coming of age. She's having this sort of it's like a debut, but it's in the community of the Black community, so it's not quite a debutante's 16th birthday party, and it's not quite the traditional Spanish 16. What is that called? It's got a really cool name, Cinque or something. So it's a very formalized 16th birthday, and we meet the whole family as Melody is coming down the stairs. Melody had been the product of her parents when her parents were very young, and Mom agreed to have the baby, but after that was not particularly interested in being the mother. So the dad steps in, the family has stepped in, and everybody's reflecting back on where they had been at the time of Melody's conception, some of the things that have happened since, and then some of the story takes place just very, very shortly after the party. So we're looking at kind of a combination of about a 4-hour moment in the party, but we're also looking back across 16 years, and we get to know the mom and the dad and the grandparents on the mom's side and the grandmother on dad's side. So, and of course Melody of course has some parts in the book. I really enjoyed this. This was definitely about character and responsiveness to a difficult situation. Of course, it's not just as black and white as Melody being conceived out of wedlock. There are other things happening. So this is a modern book. It's not, they're very traditional, old-timey type values as far as, you know, the stress of an unwed mother and, oh my gosh, ooh. So I think that part was interestingly explored because I keep forgetting that people have those kinds of values in this day and age when single mothers are, you know, they're everywhere, and thank goodness. So loved this book, and it was a quick read. It's under 200 pages, and for those of you I know who have said on YouTube that you don't love 200-page books, they're too short because you just get to know the characters. Yeah, in this book, that's for sure true. You'd like to see where things are going to go after the 16th birthday. So anyhow, I loved it. And she's written a wide number of books. Well, I can't remember. It's like 23 or something, and a number of them have won awards. So she's a terrific American author. Highly recommend anything she's written so far, that I've read so far. All right, the third book is Thomas King's Obsidian. Now this is a detective that's First Nations, Cherokee, and his name is Thumps Dreadful Water. And one of the fun things about the book is the crazy names that people have. They, you know, there's like Wonky Patak, and there's really, it's fun. And there's probably the first third of the book doesn't even have a dead body in it, or does it? Yeah, it does, in the sense that Thumps has gone back to California, back to California, where his lover and her daughter had been murdered while he had been at a conference. So he had a great alibi, but there was no evidence towards another, whoever could be the murderer. And there was some serial killing that had happened also at that time. So this mystery revolves around that mystery, and the serial killer, I don't think I'm giving anything away. You kind of figure out fairly quickly that something creepy is happening to Thumps Dreadwater and the community. So the serial killer has followed Thumps, and I guess he's really called Dreadful Water most of the time. But anyhow, so we're dealing with a, what would you call it? What's that word? A risen from the dead sort of serial killer has come to town. So it's partly funny. There's a lot of quipping going on, especially over breakfast at Al's Cafe. And there's a lot of interesting non-communication where someone will ask a question did you kill him? And someone else will go, look at those tires, aren't they dirty? And it's so you just get these missing communications that somehow get you to the end of the story. And there's some NASCAR, no, I'm telling you a lie, I'm sorry. There's cars in there that are the old cars, and my husband's family definitely was into old cars, and they would soup them up into street rods. And I think Steve was probably conceived in the back of a hot rod. So it's fun, all the discussion around cars. If you're a car lover of the oldie times, this is a definite good one. So the other, he's written 4 previous to this, and the first one's called Dreadful Water, The Red Power Murders, Cold Skies, and A Matter of Malice. And they're all really solid. I quite like them. They're different in most of the murder mysteries that I've read. It's structured differently. So this one is Under the Rainbow, and it is written by Celia Lasky. And this is another interesting community book. It takes place in the most homophobic town in the US of A. I don't know, there's some scientific, social science types data that they use to figure out who was the most homophobic, and a team of what would you call them? They're like interventionists in a way, are going into town to try and enlighten folks. And so if it's the most homophobic and then the most pro LGBTQ group, then you can imagine that there's going to be some conflict. But we see it not just in small group of characters, we see it in a range of about 20 characters who encounter this group and have self-discovery. Some of the self-discovery is enlightening, some of it is depressing. There's 2 kids in the beginning who we meet again partway through where something tragic happens. There's people who have to learn to live with their homosexuality, and they're not really very happy about confronting the fact that that's who and what they are. There are others who are somewhat on the sidelines watching things go past as the community opens up its, I don't know how much of its heart's opened up and just how much of its sort of political pressure is brought to bear. So I'm a little ambivalent on just how open-hearted this community came at the end. But I love this because it encounters all kinds of different questions, like what is my sexuality as a 16, 17-year-old, and women who are in their middle years of 30 and then their elder years, these are old day numbers, their elder years of 50, and encountering partners or spouses or children or extended family who are finally coming to grips with their sexuality and gender orientation. So there's a lot of questions in there. There are a lot of things that we may have asked ourselves around the dinner table as different, we're all at different levels on the spectrum of understanding. So they're questions that we would encounter on that journey, and these different characters have experienced them as well, and kind of open our eyes to potential answers. So solid book, really love it. And I think I came to it through, my goodness, a shelf, what's it called? A bookshelf, a shelf book. I'll get the link and put it in the doobly-doo below, but it definitely came as a recommendation from another booktuber. So the last book I'm going to bring to you is one that gave me great joy. It's a middle reader. It's Nevermore, The Trials of Morgan Crowe by Jessica Townsend. And this is a 3-parter as far as I know. It could probably go on. I think she's going to be in school for 5 years or so before she graduates to whatever. So yeah, I'm sure there's the potential for books 4 and 5. Anyhow, Morgan is a young girl who was born on the eve of sort of the solstice, but they call it different thing there. And that curses her. Any child who's born on that particular moment in the calendar is considered a cursed child, and everything is blamed on her, from the dog losing its collar to a rail accident in a country she doesn't even know about. So it's quite a life, to be the cursed person in the community. Everybody knows about her because her birth was announced at the time of. Her dad is a high-level politician, and boy, she's got a dysfunctional family. They haven't got very much pity for her. Now, on her 12th birthday, the curse is also, the part of the curse is also that she will die on her 12th birthday. So that happens unexpectedly because there's also the solstice in part of all of this, and so it turns out to be an 11-year cycle instead of a 12-year cycle. So Morrigan is rescued. She's rescued by a fellow called Jupiter, and they go off to where he lives, and it's crazy. It's really fun. There's this amazing hotel with these great characters in the hotel. There's going through the trials to be accepted in the it's not really magic. It's you have a knack for something. So you might have the knack for being able to control electricity, or you might have the knack for being able to speak to animals. And your knack allows you to kind of manipulate certain, use certain things. Of course, you could turn the lights on or turn the lights off as you see, but also if your community had damage during a hurricane or something, you might be able to keep the lights going at the nearby hospital. So they can't go outside of their magical knack, and there's definitely magic in the community, but it's not, as we've seen in other books, where you can control anything. You can control the size of a mouse to whether someone turns into a dragon or not. So it's not that kind of magic. It's just, it's quite a different kind of magic, and the world is very different, and there's some wonderful, wonderful descriptions of the city and the weird technologies that they've come into. There are animals that are part human, so they're wonimals, and there are other animals that are completely, like one of the elders is a big bull, you know, that kind of a bull. But he's also able to speak, and he has his own knack, and he's an elder in the school where the children come to grips with different aspects of other people's knacks, and you know, the more you know, the better you can communicate with your community. So Morrigan has to navigate this as well, and so there's a lot of secrecy around her because her knack is not revealed, and you, the reader, at no point do you get an inkling as to what that's all about. So it's just a roar and a rollick. I really enjoyed it. I picked up the second one. Luckily for me, they had it in the children's bookstore, Woozle's bookstore, and that one is called Wonder Smith. And I can't tell you anything about that one because it would give away too much about what happened in here. But this was definitely for middle readers. I see no reason why an adult or a teenager wouldn't enjoy this, because it's just such a great world building and such great characters. And Morrigan is not, her earlier life lets her be a bit more, well, she's not childish anymore. She never had a childhood, so she's a bit more of a serious character. And she's got a buddy, Harrowsmith, who is just wackadoodle, and he is a dragon rider. So we get to see her cautious personality against his live life to the fullest personality. It's a great partnership. I highly recommend this book, and I know I'm going to highly recommend the second one. I'm halfway through it in under a day, so I think this is a great series. That's it for me. I have a bunch of books that I will tell you about next time that I'm going to take to the camp. And my reading clubs, book clubs, are kind of weird over the summer. We don't meet a ton. And I must say, the book that they've chosen, the next two for the Woozle's book clubs, leave me dead on the floor with boredom. I listened to one of them, so I don't even want to talk about it. I would have burned it if I hadn't been a book club book. And the one that we're going to be doing in August is another Jane Austen-ish kind of book, and, you know, kind of bored of that, except that I have Longburn, which is the downstairs, no, it's in here somewhere, the downstairs story in the Jane Austen household. So, I don't know, a bit too much of it all at once in the Austen genre, so a bit yawn there. So that's it for me today. I hope all your reading dreams and adventures continue to come true, and I'll see you next time. Bye!